Carlos Sainz's momentum seems to have transferred to the rest of the grid, and after Ferrari have chosen to replace him with Lewis Hamilton from 2025 onwards, it does seem like the Spaniard will be on a mission to prove the Maranello team that they did the wrong thing here. On top of that, he has the perfect opportunity to join the best team on the grid, and judging by the fluctuation of power figures there, it's not that far-fetched of a scenario to think that Sainz would be a regular race winner, challenging type of driver as well. Will this turn to bite Ferrari in the back, and more importantly, did they make a mistake by moving forward with Lewis Hamilton? Now, the man on a mission, or as you like to call him, the smooth operator, is now linked to a move with Red Bull, as Christian Horner has opened up about the potential move that the Austrian team will make from 2025 onwards. Of course, the seat is still Perez's to lose, but judging by the circumstances in which the team is located right now, which is Sainz probably being the second fastest driver on the grid in 2024, and Perez not up to the standards once again, the Spaniard will be considered a heavy candidate to replace the Mexican driver, which does make a lot of sense for both sides. If Carlos wants to prove to Ferrari that they did the wrong thing here by replacing him with Hamilton, he would have to drive in a car that has the potential to fight up at the front constantly, and as of now, the only available seat is in Red Bull. Yes, the priority is put on the junior program in the Austrian squad, but when talking about the future of the team and who could be replacing Perez if the opportunity ever arises, Horner admitted that the team could be looking outside of their current driver pool, adding, "Based on Sainz's performance in Melbourne, you cannot rule him out as our potential driver in the future. We just want to take our time. Perez was compromised in Melbourne but has had a great start to the season. We're not in any desperate rush. Carlos is the only driver who has beaten Red Bull since the 2022 British GP, so he seems to be our only nemesis. We want to field the best pairing that we can at Red Bull Racing, and sometimes you've got to look outside the pool as well. You've had a very fast unemployed driver win the race, so the market is reasonably fluid with certain drivers." Now, this is a very important situation because the future of Red Bull has also taken a huge twist with a massive power shift currently happening in the company, and quite honestly, Verstappen being caught in the middle of it could also change a lot of stuff in the foreseeable future. As Wolff said, the Dutchman has his own principles, and he might not be the happiest driver in the current environment at Red Bull, which does give Sainz a lot to think about his future. Mercedes is definitely far behind Red Bull for the 2025 season, and they would have to bet heavily on the 2026 regulations to be competitive, whereas for Audi, the Spaniard would have to think twice whether he has 4 years of his career to waste on a startup project before he even has a chance of being competitive and winning races, which might not be written in the stars for him. All of that hints towards Sainz moving more and more towards Red Bull. And one clear warning he sent after Melbourne is that when the car is good, he's definitely the type of driver to pick for your number one guy in the team. Adding to this matter even more, Sainz elaborated, "I'm still jobless for next year, so I guess this win is good for me. But jokes aside, I know that when I'm given a good car, I can get it done. I've proved it in Singapore, I've proved it here. When the car is good, I'm happy, and I'm very happy with the car in Melbourne." Now, Sainz will give Red Bull a lot to think about because there is an opportunity for them to prove to Verstappen that he is not in fact above the team, which is the motto that Horner has led the team under ever since the first day of his arrival in 2005. Yes, it's quite far-fetched to think that Sainz can fight with Verstappen in the same machinery. But one thing is for sure, after what happened between the Verstappen-Marko clan and Christian Horner, it's obvious that there won't be any preferences towards a certain driver, which was the general belief of Verstappen in the past couple of years. Even though Horner insisted that both drivers got the same car, the fact that the Dutchman was able to extract so much more of it compared to Perez, with the big difference being the street circuits, has led the fans to believe that there are a lot of things going on behind the curtains. But with Sainz next to Verstappen, there is absolutely no chance he will settle for anything less than the same car with the Dutchman. After all, we're talking about the guy who won a race after having his appendix removed 16 days ago, While on the other hand, you have drivers who are still struggling to score points with the Red Bull's sister team, Racing Bulls. This is another very important perspective we must talk about, because if you think about it, Tsunoda is paired with Honda and he could very well leave for Aston Martin if the opportunity arises, whereas Ricciardo is not nearly at the best of his career right now and he's facing an exit from the sport as the more realistic threat right now they're being promoted to Red Bull. On top of that, Tsunoda's character and personality might not bode well with the tough environment in which Red Bull thrive under. And based on the motivation that Sainz will have to prove Ferrari that they did him utterly wrong by replacing him and leaving him without a contract for 2025, it would be the best possible outcome for the smooth operator. Plus, Sainz has been more or less underrated his entire career, due to the fact that he's been outperformed by Leclerc in the previous couple of years in Ferrari, even though he finished ahead of the Monegasque driver in his debut season with the Maranello team in 2021. This is something that's been acknowledged by Leclerc, who went on to say that there are a lot of team principals who are currently talking to Sainz and are trying to lure him into their camp, further adding, "Everybody knows Carlos's worth in the paddock. He's one of the highest rated drivers in the paddock. He's been extremely strong every time he's been in a Formula 1 car, and he's shown it multiple times. So I don't think he's underrated for that. I think everybody knows Carlos's worth, and that's why I've said many times that I'm not too worried about his future." I'm sure that many team principals are, he doesn't say it, but for sure they're speaking with him, and I'm sure he'll have many opportunities and he'll just have to make the best choice for his career. Well, all of this puts Sainz as one of the best candidates that Red Bull could consider if it comes to replacing Sergio Perez, and if there are any opportunities for Christian Horner to prove his influence in Red Bull amid the support he just received from the Thai-backed ownership, this would be one of the best ones presented to the 50-year-old. Obviously, Ricciardo's form as well as Lawson's intentions to replace him in Racing Bulls translate good news for Ricciardo, but be that as it may, there is a huge shake-up coming in front of us that we might see turmoil to the point of Sainz not even being Verstappen's teammate in the future, but not because he won't join Red Bull, but because the Dutchman could leave sooner rather than later. When talking about this matter, Wolff admitted that the primary driver to replace Hamilton would be Max Verstappen, and there is no going around it, as this relationship needs to happen sooner rather than later. It's still strange as to why Mercedes have shown zero to no interest in signing Sainz, but that could mean good news for Sainz too. Maybe Mercedes is afraid that his competitiveness would ruin their long-term plan of having Russell as their leader. So, be that as it may, all Sainz needs to do is prove that he can be the better driver in 2024 and make sure that the 2025 season will be his to take. With all this in mind, what do you think about Red Bull's opportunity to sign Sainz? And more importantly, do you think that there is a scenario in which Sainz would be the #1 driver in Red Bull if both he and Verstappen are left to be fighting for the spot in the Austrian team in a fair and square manner? Let us know in the comments down below.